Natural flea and tick treatment for dogs does work. It just works differently than most pet parents expect. If you just found fleas on your dog or you just pulled off a tick and your stomach dropped a little bit, this episode will walk you through exactly what to do next so you can act quickly and stay calm. Here's the truth. Effective natural flea and tick care for dogs isn't one magic product. It's a layered plan, and the order you follow matters.
I'm not trying to make my dog poisonous. I'm trying to make my dog resilient and repellent to fleas. The issue is that these things don't work within 20 minutes. The flea comb can be your best friend.
I'm Charlie Pruden, co-founder of Podega and host of the Next Level Pet Parent podcast, where we help proactive pet parents make confident, science-informed choices so their pets can thrive. Today, I am joined by Rita Hogan, a clinical canine herbalist with over 20 years of experience. She's the founder of the Ethos School of Canine Herbalism and the author of the Herbal Dog Book. She's worked with thousands of dogs using a practical, layered approach that focuses on resilience, not panic. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear roadmap for managing fleas and ticks naturally. First, you'll be able to tell the difference between a few fleas and a true flea infestation, so you don't overreact or miss something important. Second, you'll understand what natural flea care looks like at home, bathing and environmental steps, diet and immune support, and why quick fixes often create more stress than clarity. And third, you'll know how to remove ticks safely, what to do immediately after a tick bite, and the commonly misunderstood step that can matter later to help prevent tick-borne disease. If conflicting advice has left you overwhelmed or you've been told natural options just don't work, stay with us. You're going to get so much clarity in today's episode. Without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast, Rita. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us about natural flea and tick treatment today.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. We're having a great conversation.
I think a lot of pet parents still believe that if their dog has a flea or has fleas and ticks, the only thing that actually works is medication, is what a lot of people still think. So I hear this question all the time. Do natural flea and tick treatments actually work? So let's start right here with this question. Is it truly possible to treat fleas and ticks naturally in dogs in a way that's effective and responsible?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do. I've had dogs forever, and I've only used a flea medicine really, really long time ago. Had a horrible experience once, and the rest of my dogs have never had anything. And I do think it's about management. It's a lifestyle. It's managing. I'm not trying to make my dog poisonous. I'm trying to make my dog resilient and repellent to fleas. Ticks are a different conversation. If we want to just focus on fleas right now, there's many things that we can do. We don't want to overlook diet. Diet's very important. We want to have a dog that ticks don't necessarily like. And a healthy, resilient dog, it's not fun for a flea to want to bite them. They don't bite them as much. They tend to be more carriers, where a flea will just get on them and then jump off of them. It's an on and off. But if a dog is more sickly, is less resilient, has different type of weaknesses in their body where their organs aren't functioning correctly, or they have, skin conditions. Fleas love skin conditions. They have skin conditions that they can easily feed off of. That can be a big problem. But there's still things we can do there as well. The issue is that these things don't work within 20 minutes. It is a layered process, and it is trial and error. So we want to look at that and see our dog as an individual and what that dog needs. And even if we have multi-dogs in the home, they may need different types of things.
Amazing. And we're going to talk about natural treatment when it comes to flea and tick on our dog in a little bit. But I think what really helps is understanding what actually happens when we see a flea on our dog or we find a tick on our dog, so that we don't panic, but we get more into this mindset of like, okay, what do we do? Like, how are we gonna deal with this, right? So let's break that down. If someone finds fleas on their dogs, let's say a couple of fleas, is that a concern? Or at what point are we talking about a flea infestation?
A couple of fleas is not. You flea comb them off and go on with your day. Kill the fleas, of course, and then look at your yard, look at the inside of your house, look at what you're doing inside, and then start to work with your dog so they have less and less fleas. A flea infestation is, you've got fleas jumping on you while you're sitting on your couch, while you're laying in bed. Your dog is itching, scratching, biting, licking, doing self-harm activities to help manage their skin. Those are big issues that we need to deal with. But unless you're having those types of problems, it's not a cause for panic. It's a cause for product and flea comb, in my opinion. And this is what we do in our house. If I see a flea, I'm not afraid of a flea. I don't panic and freak out. Some people may think fleas are disgusting. Sure, I don't think that they're great, but I'm still not going to panic. Some people know that fleas can carry tapeworm. Yes, they can. You always want, during flea season, you always want to make sure you're checking to make sure your dog doesn't have tapeworm. Sure, absolutely. But that can be something that you can help prevent. And it is also something that you can deal with it if it happens. But you don't want to be in the mindset that all fleas are going to give your dog tapeworm just from being on them, because it's not true.
And can you talk a little bit about the flea life cycle? What do we need to know about that?
The flea life cycle is basically, fleas going from eggs or pupae to a full-blown flea and then starting the process all over again. I think that knowing the flea life cycle is important if you have a flea infestation. I don't think that just everyday flea life cycle for everyday flea treatment, I don't think people are really thinking about that. I think people are mainly concerned with what can I put on my dog to keep them from having fleas? Or if I find a flea, what do I do? And my first line of defense is a flea comb. Second is going to be something really easy, giving your dog a bath with a good bar of flea shampoo, soap, natural flea soap, something that's going to have lavender or eucalyptus or rosemary, something that's going to deter fleas from them. Some of those shampoos have a little bit of peppermint, a little bit of rosemary, lemongrass, lavender. That's going to stay on your dog for a little while. And I love to give and I have smaller dogs and bigger dogs. I love to do a nice flea shampoo if I find that they're having fleas, and it tends to cut down on those fleas. So if my dog Gertie's getting like 5 fleas a day that I'm consistently combing off her, I'll give her a bath and she may only have 1 or none. So that is as part of that strategy. You can give things, there's a wonderful, just easy method to spray your dog inside the house or when they're outside is apple cider vinegar and salt and water. It works very, very well to repel fleas. Apple cider vinegar in general, if you have a dog that can tolerate a little bit of it, giving, like if you've got a Chihuahua, you're just going to give like literally 1/8 of a teaspoon, and then like a golden retriever is going to get a 1/2 teaspoon a day, can really help with that. We discussed garlic. You can give your dog garlic. A small dog under 10 pounds would only get 1/8 of a teaspoon of fresh garlic.
And this is for treatment of fleas?
Oh, absolutely. It's for getting fleas to repel those fleas. Treatment of fleas is repelling fleas. A lot of the things that repel kill fleas. At the end of the day, we want the fleas off our dog. That's what we want. We want them off and not bothering our dog. Even if you have fleas in your home and you don't know, if they're not bothering your dog, if they're not causing your dog to itch and scratch, to bite, lick, and do self-harm, there's not any need for panic besides vacuuming. Right? And to just keep up with vacuuming. Anytime you have fleas in an area, you want to vacuum. And there's crossover between repellent and treatment, right? I think neem oil is an excellent treatment and repellent. For me, definitely repellent is treatment. What do we give our dogs in lieu of a flea treatment? They're repellents. They're essential oils put on the skin and fur, diluted We talked about self-selection in the last episode that we did. Same thing for fleas. Sprays can help inside the house and outside the house. We want to keep those fleas off as much as possible so that we can use a flea comb as a method of treatment. Can't tell you anything natural that absolutely kills fleas dead in a second.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing that's going to do naturally that's going to make your dog's blood toxic like a pharmaceutical. That's not where natural flea prevention and treatment. When we say flea prevention and treatment, what we're really saying is flea prevention. And because the treatment is going to be prevention, it's going to be a bath. And that does kill fleas. That definitely does kill fleas. Natural treatment is building resiliency. It's using frequency. It's doing all the things. Now, there are a couple of remedies that I absolutely love. There's one by a company that is just fabulous. It's called Freedom Flowers. And they have one that's called Flea Finale, right? And it is the energetic signatures of different things that we use for, like garlic, B complex, fish oil. These are not in the remedy per se. They're the vibrational essences of these things. And so you can put the Flea Finale, it's a mouthful, in the bath. You can put it in your dog's drinking water. You can put it and spray on your dog. This is going to help with the resonance. And I've seen a lot of these frequency flower remedies work wonders in dogs, work wonders because it's helping that resonance that attracts the fleas to the dog. And that is very, very important. There's another remedy called Professional Formulas Homeopathic Flea Aid. Now, this is a remedy that's going to help when your dogs are getting bit. We want to help relieve the itching, scratching, biting, and the kind of sensitivities. And there's also flea allergy that comes along with getting bit by fleas. And that's, I think, what really causes people to be panicky and to be so frustrated. Like, we've got to do something, right? And having a plan for that and giving that remedy is going to help bring down those types of reactions. And I think that's very important. And like you said, Charlie, diet, having a clean diet, adding fish oil when it's appropriate, giving some types of supplements. Again, love neem. You can give it internally and use it externally. I like garlic when used in appropriate doses for fleas. That's going to be part of the treatment. And then just to reiterate, the essential oils that I like for fleas are going to be cedar, eucalyptus, geranium. I like geranium a lot for ticks as well. Lemongrass, peppermint, rosemary, lavender. Those are oils that do have some efficacy and even science-based efficacy for repelling fleas.
I can share a personal story from my dog. My dog has only ever had a flea problem once in her life, thankfully. We were taking care of another dog, and that dog unfortunately had fleas. And we noticed that dog was like itching a lot and biting her paw. And then the same day, we were just looking at Milka, and then we saw these black little dots on her stomach, and we were like, okay, hold on. This, we remember about fleas. What are they actually? Can you remind me? What are those black little dots?
That's flea droppings. It's dried blood. Just to interject for a second, when you find those types of things on your dog, the fleas have been on your dog for a little bit. So they're not jumping off, they're taking advantage.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah. We found those black little dots, and we knew, okay, it's time to Google what that is. So we realized it was fleas. And what we did was we also went with an essential oil shampoo, the flea and tick shampoo from Kind, and we basically just showered her like every single day, sometimes twice a day. We did that for, I think, 4 days. And back then we didn't actually use a flea comb. I'm sure why we didn't do that, but we just showered her like once or twice a
Yeah.
day. And we were vacuuming every day. We were washing all of our clothes and everything, like the bed sheets, her bed sheets, everything every day. And thankfully, we got rid of it quite fast. I think within 4 days or so, it was like there was no more of these black droplets. So, but we still continued with the shampoo every day. So I think that was like an experience for us. But I think a lot of pet parents are struggling a lot more when it comes to getting rid of fleas. So I think they say about over 50% of fleas actually live in the environment and
Yeah.
not on the dog, right?
Yeah.
So, what are the things that we can do in the environment to actively treat a flea infestation?
What you were dealing with is just a case of fleas. It wasn't an infestation. So, an infestation takes over your life. Your dog is miserable. You can't do anything without seeing fleas jump here, there, and everywhere. Those are hard. You have to wash, like you have to wash the carpets. You have to use diatomaceous earth. You have to vacuum, 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 vacuum. You have to make, shower. If you have a dog, you can easily shower. I would definitely wash them every day until the infestation is over. You also have to make sure that you are watching your stress during that, knowing that it will come to an end. I think definitely essential oils are needed for that, to spray in the environment, on surfaces, things like that. There's some really great companies out there that are making some great products that you can use. Like Canine makes a great line of flea and tick. Earth Animal does as well. They have a whole system. But some people panic with a flea infestation, where they will start using like the daily flea kill meds like Advantus, not Advantage, but it's called Advantus, Capstar. Those are things that kill fleas within 15 minutes. They definitely are going to be recommended by the vet to get a hold of a flea infestation. And you know, people panic. And if you are going to use any of those things to get a hold of a flea infestation, we don't want fleas to get to that point. That's why it's repel, 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 vacuum, vacuum, and have flea repelling be part of the lifestyle. But if you do get to that point and you have to use something, you want to make sure that you absolutely prepare your dog's body for a type of medicine like that. And if you do, you're going to have a lot better chance at it being successful and your dog not being harmed. And I've seen so many people not prepare their dog's body, have something awful happen in the face of panicking, and then they feel worse about their choice. Like, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done it. And I don't want anyone to have that lesson. So if you have to use something like that, then what you're going to do is you're going to give something to stabilize the nervous system, because these are neurotoxins. Okay. They're toxic to the nervous system, and they're also blood toxins. So that's going to need liver support and lymphatic support. So what you're going to do is you're going to, the easiest thing is you're going to give milk thistle to your dog. You're going to give milk thistle a week before, about 4 to 6 weeks after. And you're going to give a nervous system remedy. I like skullcap. You can give it dried or as an extract. You're going to give skullcap along with milk thistle at least a week before and weeks after. I like 4 to 6 weeks after you give that remedy. And if you were to keep your dog on something like that for some reason, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you did, you need to give those nervous support and liver support the whole entire time they're on them, no matter what. And then I think you said that you had a great podcast episode with Julianne Lee that helped with homeopathic remedies to help detox those things out of the body as well. So, but natural flea treatment is natural flea prevention deterrent, I think, is kind of how it needs to be reiterated to people or re-educated, because that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for those fleas to not want to be on your dog, and they're not going to want to be in your home. They will go somewhere else. In time, if they're not feeding off your dog consistently, then they will get vacuumed. That flea cycle will come round, they'll come out, you'll vacuum, they'll be gone. And like I said, I have never used anything with, like, especially the dogs I have now.
If you're listening and you're feeling overwhelmed, trying to figure out what's actually safe and effective when it comes to flea and tick protection for your dog, you're truly not alone. There's a lot of conflicting advice, and most pet parents just want clear, responsible guidance. That's exactly why we created our ultimate flea and tick protection guide. Inside, you'll find trusted expert insights on natural prevention, treatment options, and even science-based resources that break down potential side effects of common flea and tick treatments. It's all designed to help you think critically and make informed decisions for your dog. You can download it for free in the description below. And this episode is actually part of our flea and tick awareness series, where we're building this understanding step by step. If this episode has been helpful to you so far, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next conversation on this topic.
I have never used anything, and we've never had a flea infestation. Yes, we've had some fleas, but never a flea infestation, never a flea overpopulation. These are the things I do. And I will give you a tip before we move on to ticks. If you have a big dog, you can get a damp white sheet, put it on the ground, put your dog on top of it, shake your hands all the way through their tail, up their rump, along their neck and ears, and under their undercarriage to shake off some of those blood droppings. And what you'll get is little red spots on that white sheet. You can use a towel, you can use a kitchen towel, you can use a paper towel if your dogs are little. Like I have a 12-pound dog, so she makes everything easier, but that will show if there is blood on your dog. And you'll know an infestation, but you know that you're going to have to up your game, and people really have gotten out of the habit of flea combing, and the flea comb can be your best friend.
Thank you so much for explaining that. If someone follows this multifaceted approach that you just mentioned, so the daily showers, the daily cleaning of the home, and the daily flea combing and everything else that we just mentioned, maybe even the diatomaceous earth or zeolite is also another thing that we can use topically to dry out the fleas. If someone follows this step by step, because one of their dogs has fleas, when should they realistically expect to see improvement? What is realistic?
They were around another dog that had active fleas,
Yeah, to be honest, the dog did leave like the same day. Yeah, I think when we found the fleas, the dog left, the mom came back, and then the dog wasn't allowed to come back.
Yeah, so that dog needs to up their game, right? They have fleas. But you didn't, you just had a case of your dog having some fleas. But it's a perfect example of a little bit of panic. There's no need to wash your clothes, but that's a perfect example of what happens. Like, we freak out, right? If there's no need to daily shower if you're not having an infestation, but like if your dog has fleas, until they're done having fleas on them and that that dog left, right? The dog's gone. Yeah, you could give a week of daily baths and see how that goes. If your dog just has, a random few fleas here and there, I think weekly baths is good. If you have a flea infestation, I think all of the things that you mentioned definitely need to happen until it is over. Definitely needs to happen.
That could take weeks.
It could take weeks. With a big furry dog, a dog that is not easy to shower at all or wash, you want to put your mask on. I bring them outside, get that diatomaceous earth in their fur, get it in there, let it settle. Make sure that you have your dog outside, that you're not like super going like this so that the diatomaceous earth is going to be atomized into the air, but like rub it through their fur, get it in there, try to get it so that it will dry up those fleas. And again, you can look at different, like Earth Animal has a powder. There's different companies that have a powder that you can use, a flea powder. I know that in my flea course, I have some homemade flea powder that you can make that works really well. There's a lot of products out there if you look and try to see what works with your dog. But yeah, I do think the multi approach works. And I think that my colleagues and myself and all the people that I'm friends with that are natural, they're a testament to that the multi-prong approach works, because they don't use these things either.
Yeah. Just a very quick question. When someone has a multi-dog household and one of their dogs has fleas, do all of the dogs need to be treated naturally? Like, would you put the diatomaceous earth on all
I
of the
would
dogs or only the dogs that are confirmed or?
I would check. Okay, so if you have a dog that has fleas, we have one dog that's more prone to fleas than others. I would check the other dogs to see if they have fleas. Are they our basset hound? She has since passed, but our basset hound was what I call a flea carrier. You'd never know that
Hmm.
a flea was on her. They didn't bother her whatsoever. But every time she rolled over, she spent a ton of time outside. You'd see a few on her belly. They would jump off. She never had any flea bites. She definitely was a carrier. Yes, I mean, using repellents on them, I would definitely get repellents on all of your dogs. I would bathe the dog that was having the fleas every day and probably comb the others.
Okay.
But if you
All right.
like, if you got little dogs, shove them all in the sink and give them a I mean, if you've got 150-pound dogs, it might be a problem. If you have a dog that's adverse to bathing, that might be an issue. When we are talking to other people about natural flea repellents and flea care, we have to consider their lifestyles. We have to consider what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. That can
Yeah,
also be an
so
issue.
true.
So the multi-pronged approach definitely works. One of my dogs loves being vacuumed, so I vacuum her.
Interesting.
Yeah. She loves it. She thinks it's fun. But, you could do that too if your dog is okay with it.
Yeah, my dog would start a fight with the vacuum cleaner for sure.
Yeah.
So let's shift to natural tick treatment for dogs. When I found ticks on my dog, the very first thing I did was I grabbed the tick key and removed the tick. But the proper tick removal technique is actually quite important. So I would love to you explain, how do you remove a tick from a dog safely?
I use a tick key. I think everyone should have one in their pack, in their emergency kit, in their dog care kit. A tick key is essential. It just is. It's part of owning it. For me, it's part of having a dog. If you have ticks
Mm,
around you, it is part of having a dog, because the issue is we don't want to leave the head in the bite. We want to make
mhm.
sure the head comes out. A lot of times, if we just grab a tick and pull it out, we're going to leave the head in, and then you've got to take a tweezers, and then it can get infected, and it's a mess. The tick key really, really helps. Also, moving right into, once you get that tick out, you want to put it in a bag and label it in case you need to send it in for testing.
Okay.
If your dog isn't getting bit, if the tick has not been on them very long, then it's no problem. If it's just like you just went for a walk, then you found a tick, he was starting to try to in bed, and you took him out, you should be fine. You should be absolutely fine.
Mm.
But if you find a tick that's engorged, take it out. I usually cut its head off, and then I will keep that body. It's just nasty. The head and the body in a plastic bag, label it, and I put it in the deep freezer. It's disgusting. And if I don't use them for a
Sounds
year,
like
then
a
I
true
throw them out.
crime show.
Yeah, it is. But
Good.
it's so important to have that tick to see what it has in case your dog comes up with symptoms. And that's
Mm,
tick-borne disease is why people are afraid of ticks. There's no other really reason, because you can just remove them. If a tick doesn't carry tick-borne disease and doesn't transmit it to your dog, there's no really reason to be super weirded out about ticks. You just take them
yeah.
off your dog, you pull them off like I did when I was a kid, and you go on with your day. But now,
Mhm.
because our dogs and people, I would say a high level of chronic disease, right? Chronic disease, there's a higher level of tick-borne disease,
Mm,
much higher level of tick-borne disease. And we have killed off a lot of the natural predators of ticks. Our
yeah.
bird populations are down. There's population, the wildlife is down. The ticks are not down. That's another problem. It's not that we have more ticks, it's that we are systematically killing off the predators that eat ticks to survive.
Mhm.
So now we have more ticks and we have more bites. And so with the tick repellent is part of the tick treatment. But with ticks, we have to consider the tick-borne diseases: Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, rocky spotted fever, Ehrlichia, and then we have like Bartonella and Babesia that is on the increase. I think I mentioned rocky spotted fever, which can be a huge problem. I mean, it
Mhm.
can be much more of an emergency than a lot of the others.
Could you expand on the reasoning of holding on to the tick? For example, if my dog had symptoms after the tick bite. There are tick disease tests that we can do at the vet. What would be the added benefit of having the tick physically?
To know if your dog has severe symptoms like paralysis or fever or neurological problems, that you know that these are the ticks they came in contact with this week or last month. You can test that tick to see what it had within it. Testing the tick is very, very beneficial, in my opinion, if there's a major problem. And if you don't have the tick, you can't test it. If your dog had neurological problems within a week of getting bit, right? A lot of times that's not going to show up in the body, but it can show up in the tick. So the tick can be tested, and you can be like, yes, those symptoms are indicative of anaplasmosis or Lyme's disease. This tick, unfortunately, is a Lyme tick and is carrying Lyme. So that's what makes it so important. And I do want to say that ticks cannot hurt you by just having them in your hand. Like people are so grossed out by insects in nature that they create in your head that if you have a tick in your hand, you're going to die. You're going to get Lyme's disease, you're going to die, it's going to infect you with some weird flesh-eating disease. I mean, I've seen people just, dog owners as dog guardians in tick areas, we're going to have to build a little thicker skin in being able to deal. It's part of being a dog owner. Our dogs are not hygienic. They are not, we all know dogs do some really gross things, right? We've all seen it. We've all been there and had the conversation, got the t-shirt. They do really gross things, and it's part of having a dog. And so know that ticks can't hurt you unless they bite you and embed in you. They cannot hurt you by just having them in your hand, by touching them. Yes, go wash your hands for sure. Wash your hands. Nobody wants tick residue. Wash your hands. Even if the blood from a tick gets on your hand, it is not going to make you sick. It's not going to infect you. Go wash your hands. And you can wear gloves. We're not living like we used to live. And like I grew up on a farm and we touched insects all the time and got used to it. And so you just kind of have to get used to things so that we're not overreacting and we're not panicking.
So the next thing, since we're talking about tick-borne disease, after removing a tick, what can we do to help prevent tick-borne disease in our dogs proactively? Are there any remedies that we can give our dogs? Is there anything that we can do to help prevent?
Absolutely. No, first off, diet, good diet, building a resilient dog. Also, medicinal mushrooms, excellent at adding to the diet to build good immune health. Anything that's going to increase the immune system is going to be very, very good. Now, there are a couple of remedies I absolutely love. I use them all the time. I have families that are in high tick areas take them as well, people and dogs. They're called homeopathic nosodes. Depending on the ticks in your area, I use what's called professional formulas, tick pathogen nosode and the Lyme nosode. What they are is they're made from the actual material. So they're made from Lyme ticks. They're made from ticks with anaplasmosis, and they're diluted down to a frequency. None of it actually left in there, but the frequency pattern is there. And what happens is that is going to give the body information on how to balance that out. Homeopathy is like cures like. Okay. So when the body has that information, it can know what to do with it. Is it a vaccine? No, it is not a vaccine per se. It is information. It is frequency and resilience. And I've seen these remedies absolutely work miracles on dogs that are having tick-borne diseases for prevention. What I do is I have families and give their dogs and any cat that goes outside and themselves, if they're worried about Lyme disease or worried about tick pathogen disease, I have them take it once a week. And it literally is just a couple of drops. It doesn't interfere with anything. I have them take it once a week, every week during tick season. And that can very, very much help your dog have that information in their bodies as part of their immune systems. And so I love those. So I've been working with tick dogs for a long time, working with dogs that have tick-borne disease. And when you understand Lyme, when you understand biofilm, when you understand what tick-borne disease is doing and how it interacts with the nervous system and the immune system, we can make strides on what, as an herbalist, what can we do to help after a dog gets bit by a tick. And so I make a product called Afterbite. This is made with homeopathic ledum, which you can give ledum right after a tick bite. That's going to help prevent some of these tick-borne diseases, especially Lyme. I use a plant called teasel. And teasel, if you look at it, it looks like an upside down tick. It's got these spires that come out, and it looks like a tick that is upside down. And it is excellent at keeping, what we want to do is we want to keep that bacteria in the bloodstream, not in biofilm. And biofilm is this basically way that bacteria form kind of like a little community with, just picture it having a little dome over it, right? And they stay inside these biofilms and come out when it's opportunistic. When your dog is stressed, when they're not doing well, when their resilience goes down, that's when you start seeing these symptoms again. And it's really hard to eradicate these tick-borne illnesses in that biofilm. And what teasel does is it helps flush bacteria into the bloodstream so that the immune system can see it and destroy it. I also use olive buds and sweet chestnut buds. And there's an herb called usnea. And usnea is what I would say is the nature's doxycycline. And doxycycline it's called a standard of care for any type of tick bite that is causing issues. And usnea is really good at that. So I like to use this product after bite, or a combination of those remedies for after a tick bite. And you can also put different types of, like, a diluted oil of oregano inside the tick bite. You can do different types of things inside the tick bite, neem oil inside the tick bite to help be an antiseptic, and like different antiseptics that can go inside the tick bite, natural antiseptics. Colloidal silver is a good one, 10 ppm. The silver hydrosol, Adored Meat makes a good one of those. So I do have my favorite remedies. There's another remedy out there called Borel Immune. And this is just a combination of good herbs for ticks. There was an herbalist called Stephen Buhner, who is a tick pathogen specialist. He has since passed, but he wrote some really great books on dealing with tick pathogens, because again, this is what we're afraid of, right? We don't want these types of pathogens causing disease in our dogs. Otherwise, tick bites wouldn't be that much of a problem. He has a whole reference of herbs, and Borel Immune is one of those formulas that has a lot of those herbs that he recommends in it. Those are the things I use the most in different combinations for tick bites in general, because we want to prevent infection. We want to prevent the bacteria that ticks inject into the bloodstream from taking hold and causing problems.
Thank you so much for explaining that in great detail. I think a lot of pet parents and listeners might right now be a little bit overwhelmed, and I can completely understand that. What I can share from my personal experience is Milka had Ehrlichia last year, which is a tick-borne disease, and we were put into that. I mean, we knew she was bit by a tick. We did all of the immune enhancing things, ramped up her immune supplements and all of that. We did do the ledum with her as well, and a few other homeopathic remedies. Then she did get the diagnosis of Ehrlichia still. I mean, she was bit by a lot of ticks. So anyway, that's a different story. But what I felt like in that moment, when we were having to go out and buy all these different herbs and all these different homeopathic remedies, and we had to mix them all because we weren't in America at the time. So we had to just work with what we had at the moment, which was just these 30 different remedies, and mixing them all and making all these tinctures. And I just found myself being like, oh my God, I am so grateful for all of these amazing pet companies that put all of these remedies together. And make it so that I can just go to the place and buy the remedy and just have to give one remedy, or, maybe a couple, maybe 5 remedies, whatever, but they're all in the combination already. I'm so grateful for that. So I'm definitely going to make sure that these combination herbs and combination remedies that you just mentioned, I'm going to link them in the show notes for everyone to check them out, because I know you've just mentioned it a lot and I don't want people to feel overwhelmed.
I'm just really glad. I mean, we have so many wonderful companies out there that are making some good remedies and based on, their own clinical research or their own, prolonged experience. I think that it's really important. And there's also really great doctors and scientists out there that we're finding so much more about what is happening when people and dogs are getting bit by ticks, and like the life cycle and how long a tick has to be embedded in order for them to transmit for the most part. I mean, it's not going to be 100%, but it gives us a good guide on when to panic and when not to panic. And I think if we can give the body the information it needs to have the immune system deal with things, and we know what to do, then I think it helps us calm down a little bit. And to also know if your dog does get sick, there are answers. And building this natural community is just really important so that we all feel supported, and also knowing when we need to go to the vet. Knowing like, okay, no, this is an emergency. If your
Yeah.
dog is splayed out, can't move, has tick paralysis, you need to go to the vet. And yes, you're going to need to do the doxycycline. Is that an emergency? I mean, should I just use natural? Probably not, especially when you are not skilled in the art of that. We can clean up that mess later. I have seen doxycycline is very important. Timing is very important. It doesn't work 2 months later. Even if you give it, it's not going to work hardly at all. It works when it's immediate, and it works definitely when you can test that tick, right? And you know what it's used for. I'm not a huge fan of it. If your dog has paralysis, or it's used a lot in Rocky Mountain spotted fever, it can kill your dog, right? It's one of those things that it can be mild, but it can also be severe. Having a good holistic veterinarian and a relationship with a holistic veterinarian is really important. Even if you don't have a holistic veterinarian near you, you can have a relationship online, and you can meet with them, and they can, we have cameras now, and we have phones now, and they can see your dog and look at your dog and say, yes, you need to go to the emergency room, and this is what you need to tell them. All of that is so important in this multi-layer approach. When you can use natural 99% of the time, but when is it an emergency? And I think that's really important. And doing testing like you did. I know you did the PCR test, and I know you did the antibody test, and just educating about that.
Thank you so much for adding that. Honestly, I think that is such an important part of the conversation for pet parents to understand that even if it sounds very scary in the moment to get this diagnosis of a tick-borne disease, for example, you are not helpless in the moment. You are allowed to go home and get a second opinion. And you mentioned the case that we were exactly in. We were not in America. We had to go to a conventional vet. We got the diagnosis, and then we went home and we did an online consultation with our holistic experts, and then we decided what to do. And we ended up not doing the doxycycline, but that's a whole different episode. But which actually we did record an episode about our personal experience with Ehrlichia and how we handled that with Milka. But it is so important for pet parents to know that there are a lot of times there are options. We're allowed to talk to holistic veterinarians about it, or integrative veterinarians.
And also, if your dog is testing positive for something, right, and they're not severely symptomatic, they may have some symptoms, but not like life-threatening symptoms. You have choices. You have lots of choices.
And also, just a very quick note as well, Milka went to the vet. We did a heartworm test, which is what's it called, SNAP 4DX. And it tests for also Ehrlichia. And the vet, this was just recently, the vet came back and she said, your dog was tested positive for Ehrlichia, and she has to get treatment for it. And then we were like, no, wait, she was positive for Ehrlichia. She overcame it. She tested negative on the PCR test already. She still has the antibodies though. And that is what showed up in the antibody test. But the doctor, because she didn't know her history, she was right away, she was like, okay, the dog has to be treated for Ehrlichia. That just goes to say, again, it's very important to understand the difference between antibody testing and PCR testing. And a positive antibody test doesn't mean that your dog has an active infection. Thank you so much, Rita, for taking the time to talk with us about natural treatment of flea and ticks today. Can you just let our listeners know how can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more? What type of offers do you have out there that might be interesting for our listeners, and how can they work with you?
I have two websites. My first one is a shop and consultancy, and I have a lot of information on there. It's canine herbalist with a T.com. And then I have an educational school, the Ethos School of Holistic Canine Herbalism. I have a great flea course on there. And late March, I will be having my Lyme and tick tick pathogen disease course. So that might be of interest. I also have a lot of courses on there that people can take. I'm on social media at Canine Herbalist on Instagram and Facebook at Canine Herbalist. And I have a podcast called Dogs Are Individuals. And then, of course, my book is called The Herbal Dog, and you can get that anywhere you purchase books.
Amazing. Yeah. And I definitely do recommend the book to everyone listening. That was just amazing. Thank you again, Rita, for taking the time today.
Thank you so much. Take care.
If there's one thing I hope you're walking away with, it's this. Natural flea and tick care isn't about finding the one single solution. It's about staying calm, thinking in layers, and responding early instead of reacting out of fear. If this topic has ever left you feeling overwhelmed, second-guessing yourself, or unsure what to do first, that's completely understandable. There's a lot of noise out there, but you now have a clear framework to think through this. If you would like a clear, organized reference to support you, I've put together the complete flea and tick protection guide. It brings together expert insights on natural prevention, treatment, and smarter protection strategies. You can download it for free in the description below and keep it as a steady reference whenever you need it. And if this conversation resonated with you, I would suggest watching the next episode where we share our personal experience navigating tick-borne disease with my dog Milka. It adds another layer of perspective and helps you see how these principles play out in real life. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next episode.